The Second Coming, William Butler Yeats. It's basically a modern poetry. So, at first, we should learn about the modern poetry. Modern poetry in English emerged in the late 19th century and was rooted in the idea that traditional forms of art, literature, social organization, and daily life had become outdated, and it was therefore essential to sweep them aside and reinvent culture. It encouraged the idea of re-examination of every aspects of the art of poetry with the goal of finding that which was holding back progress and replacing it with new and therefore better ways of reaching the same end. Main characteristics of modern poetry as a result of the political changes and two world wars the sense of confidence in Victorian literature is replaced by the loss of faith, suffering, and uncertainty against the Victorian conservative ideals, which now seemed questionable in the widespread turmoil and suffering of the early 20th century. Modernist poets were concerned with the breaking away from established rules, tradition, and conventions. The chief concern of modern poets was language and how to use it and with writing itself. Modern poetry is mostly pessimistic as a result of the widespread suffering due to two world wars and what they viewed as the collapse of society. Here is William Butler Yeats, who was born in 1865 and 1939. 1865 and 1939. The Second Coming, William Butler. Standing and turning in the winding gyre, the falcon cannot hear the falconers. Things fall apart, the center cannot hold. Mere anarchy is loosed upon the world. The world dimmed tide is loosed, and everywhere the ceremony of innocence is drowned. The best lack all confidence, while the worst are full of passion intensity. Surely some revolution is at hand. Surely the second coming is at hand. The second coming hardly are those words out when a vast image out of spiritus mundi troubles my sight. Somewhere in sands of the desert, a shape with lion body and the head of a man. A gaze blank and pitiless as the sun is moving its slow thighs, while all about it real shadows of the indignant desert birds. The darkness drops again, but now I know that 20 centuries of stony sleep were vexed to nightmare by a rocking cradle. And what rough beast its hour come round at last, slouches towards Bethlehem to be born. Historical background of the poem. Yeats wrote The Second Coming in 1999. Yes, between 1815, the end of the Napoleonic Wars, and 1814, the World War I. Europe had enjoyed almost a century without major conflict. This was an exceptionally long period of peace. Then in 1814, the World War I, the Irish Easter Rising, the Russian Revolution, the rise of the communist movement in Germany, and soon after the rise of fascism in both Germany and Italy. All followed each other rapidly. Suddenly, everybody was fighting in Europe. The First World War. The picture of First World War. Let's begin analyzing the poem. Turning and turning in the widening gyre, the falcon cannot hear the falconer. Things fall apart, the center cannot hold. The poem begins with the image of falcon flying away from its human master, the falcon turning in a widening gyre spiral. Cannot hear the falconer. The falcon has gotten itself lost by flying too far away. The falconer who has trained his bird to return is now unable to summon the bird, which cannot hear the cry to return home. This image of the falcon and falconer can be read as a reference to the collapse of traditional social arrangements In Europe, a metaphor for the encroaching disorder, chaos, disintegration. It's Falcon, it's Zaire. Then the poem announces that things fall apart, the center cannot hold, things fall apart because the center cannot hold. That the fact that centers no longer function but lose hold signals an ominous message of doom. Mere anarchy is loosed upon the world, the bloom dimmed, tide is loosed, and everywhere the ceremony of innocence is drowned. Universal dissolution and total mere anarchy are loosed upon the world, a tide red with blood is released and loosed over everything, suggesting massive violent deaths as in a war. Not merely water, this tide drowns bodies as well as innocence itself. It washes away purity. The ceremony of innocence would refer to the how things were before the chaos started. Yeats is thinking back to those beautiful and peaceful times of his childhood. And now, how they are gone forever. The blood dimmed tide is loosed, and everywhere the ceremony of innocence is drowned. The best lack the all conviction, while the worst are fully passionate intensity. The speaker laments that only bad people seem to have any enthusiasm nowadays. The best are paralyzed by the lack of conviction, while the worst are outspoken and fired with enthusiasm, passionate intensity, and power. The reference here is the powerful effect of the fairy language of fantasism and hatred. The best lack all conviction, while the worst are full of passionate intensity. Is the example the Hitler, who is a who was a bad man, and uh, who was a worst man and full of passion intensity. Surely some revelation is at hand, surely the second is at hand, the second coming. The poem's narrator now makes some guess about what exactly is happening. The first surmise that some revelation is here. When the narrator then supposes that second coming is here, he seems to indicate even more strongly that he witnessed an end of the world like one described in the Bible. The second coming hardly are those words out when a vast image out of spiritus mundi troubles my side somewhere in sands of the desert. A shell, a shape with lion body and the head of a man, a gaze blank and pitiless at the sun, is moving its slow thighs, while all above it real shadows of the indignant desert birds. At the start of the second stanza, Yeats expects a revelation, saying surely a revelation is at hand. The narrator is then promoted into a vision of his own. His sight becomes troubled by an image out of spiritus mundi, a Latin term that means the spirit of the world. He sees a shape with lion body and the head of a man. The Egyptian sphinx sits in the middle of a desert while its motion is started or parts into angry flight. Here's a shape with a lion body and the head of a man. Sphinx. The vision of the beast contradicts with the Christian prophecy of the second kind. The poems presents an opposite view of the conventional Christian vision of future world, a mere sinister, more pessimistic. The vision of beast contradicts with the Christian prophecy of the second coming. The poem represents an opposite view of the conventional Christian vision of future of the uh, world, a more sinister and more pessimistic. Apocalypse. The second coming evokes the Christian concept of apocalypse. The poem alludes to the apocalypse vision to the book of Revelation, the last book of the Christian Bible. Rock beast, yet imagines moving toward Bethlehem, the birthplace of Christ, to be born affiliate. Second coming of Christ, however, the image of the Sphinx provides an apocalypse very different from the Christian vision in the end of the world. Order and disorder style,